If you looked up in the dictionary under Southern charm, you would see a picture of Howard Neiswender. Just Neiswender, I'll get that right yet, but I've had the pleasure of working with Howard now for over 20 years, and a remarkable professional. So I couldn't believe that he was actually willing to come out all the way from Alabama to be with us, but I said, okay, I'm taking you on. Also, while we're waiting for Howard to be mic'd up, if you like what you hear today, and we're actually already been asked by a group to come in and co-present this presentation for their membership. So if in the community of Carlsbad, if we want to put together a group of business people, we're going to be doing this gig in the first week of May. I'm speaking out of town the early part of the week, but I know that we're going to have the four of us back again that first week of May. So if you have an organization that you'd like to have this content presented, it's going to be free. So you can't beat the price tag on it, but again, we're so passionate about getting this message out to business owners. All right, without further ado, my friend Howard Neiswender. Nice to see you, Howard. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There you go.
Appreciate it so much. It's a real honor to be here with you guys today. What I'm going to really talk about is trying to maximize the value of a business, and that really applies to business owners, people that work for business owners, and people that advise business owners. Because what happens so very often is you have one bite at the apple, and if you don't maximize the value, you can really leave a lot of money on the table. And what that results in, as Max was saying, is most businesses, 70 to 80%, don't sell for fair value. And 75% of the owners, about 12 months later, realized they didn't really get what they wanted out of their business. They put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, but they were not able to really get that full value. Now, why is that? Well, number one, procrastination. People don't like to think about this stuff. They're more concerned about, coming into work, putting their 8, 9, 10 hours in, going home, putting their head on the pillow, coming back the next day, doing the same thing. So they're really not focused on the big picture, what the end result might be, how all this kind of fits together. They just tend to procrastinate. They think that they can wake up at any point in time and sell their business for maximum value and ride off in the sunset. Well, for various reasons we'll talk about, that typically doesn't happen. And then secondly is just lack of planning. People tend to be very reactive and not proactive. So one of the things I really want to try to impact upon all of you today is the need to do proper planning, because with the proper planning, you can maximize the value of a business throughout its entire term. So you don't have to basically worry about where you are on the spectrum. If you're a startup, if you're a mature business, if you're actually going to try to put your business on the market, you can, if you're maximizing the value, deal with all of those points on the spectrum. And also, as Max said, we don't know from day to day if we're going to be around or not. We may pass away, we may become disabled, and we may be forced out of our business. And so you have to basically be maximizing that value every single day so that no matter what comes down the pipe, you have a plan to deal with it. Now, buyers tend to look at businesses over various different points. Current point in time, over a period of time, relative to your peer groups, relative to your potential. Let me focus on that. If you're not maximizing your potential in your business, then there's a lot of buyers that would love to come in and buy you at a low price and take advantage of that opportunity to maximize the potential and reap the benefit on their dime. So if you're not maximizing your potential, that is a huge opportunity for someone to come in and really take your business away and not pay you anywhere close to fair value. What you really want is synergistic value. That is a business that can basically be taken over without having to do anything to it. It just fits right into the buyer's model. The buyer can rock on down the road and you're getting full value because there's nothing the buyer really has to do to tinker with your business to get any additional benefit out of it. It's already maxed out in terms of potential, and a buyer will pay good dollars for that type of a situation. Now, for our purposes, really the things we need to focus on are the first and the last here. Income is king when it comes to value in your business. So what you have to do as a business owner or working in a business or advising a business is to make sure that they're maximizing the income the best they possibly can, because that typically is going to be factored into some type of a multiple, and that will result in value. Market is really not that big of a deal. You can dominate your market today. You may not dominate it in a couple of years from now. Assets are typically not very relevant unless you're talking about something like a trucking company that's got a lot of trucks and other equipment, and it can be very deceiving. I had a client here recently that on paper had an asset value of around $25 million. And he thought that that was all his business was worth, and he was basically thinking he would go out to market on that kind of a value. We came in, did some preliminary work, and discovered that the business was really truly worth about $80 million. And oh, by the way, about 3 weeks ago, we closed on an $80 million deal that he would have been very happy to get $25 million for. So again, with the proper planning, we were able to obviously get him multiples of what he thought, because he had a completely different, erroneous idea about what the value of his business was. With a closely held business, a lot of times it's tied into the personal side. What I do is a little unique. I really look at a business and the business owner from both the business side and the personal side, because you really can't tell when one stops and the other starts. It's so intertwined that you really are having to deal with both sides of the equation. Now, with a personal business owner, a lot of times, unfortunately, it deals with age and energy level. So if you're a young entrepreneur and really all gung-ho and really putting a lot of time and effort into your business, maybe a buyer will look at that with more value than someone that's in their 70s and just basically punching a clock, not putting in any real energy at all. So age and energy level, unfortunately, are factors in what we're talking about. Personal involvement can be a little bit of a slippery slope. You can put too much time into a business and become so dominant that a buyer's going to discount that, because the buyer knows that without you, there's really not much value there. Or you can be basically an absentee owner and have so much time away from the business that that's a detraction too. So you want to kind of hit that happy median. Health. Unfortunately, health is an issue in a closely held business. So if the primary driver, the primary owner is suffering some health issues, then a buyer will, unfortunately, almost like a vulture, swoop in and try to get a lower price. And that's, again, the reason you want to grow your business and maximize it every single day, so that when those situations happen, you are able to take advantage of the fact that you have maximized your business. And the real key to a lot of buyers is willingness to stay on. Most buyers will want the key owners, the management team, to stay on after a transaction for some period of time. And usually there's compensation issues around that to make sure that they do so. So if you're not willing to stay around, you may not be able to maximize your value, but that could be your choice. But a lot of times you have to resign yourself to the fact that it's going to be necessary for you to stay around and have a transition, the passing of the baton, so to speak. Now, as I mentioned to you, with a closely held business, a lot of times you have to focus on both the business and the personal side. And the things that we try to get people to start thinking about, as Max said, initially getting some valuation, some business appraisals to set some type of a guideline for what the business may be worth. I may be an owner of a business and I may be thinking it's worth $50 million, but I have really nothing to base that on. A professional valuation company can come in and do the analysis that is necessary to really put a value on it based upon what the market will bear, and maybe it's really more like a $30 million business or a $25 million business. So it gives me as an owner a better idea about where I stand and where I need to go, because a lot of times these valuations will point out issues that a business owner can correct as going forward and increase that value exponentially. If you're in a business with other owners, sometimes you have buy-sell agreements or agreements that say if I leave or if I die, then the other owners have the right to purchase my interest. Well, what happens a lot of times is they'll do those kinds of agreements at startup and fix a value at, say, X, and never think about revisiting that value. And so when the business grows to 10X and I decide I want to walk away, or unfortunately I pass away, well, then my family or I take a haircut because they're only legally required to pay me X, not the 10X it's actually worth. So if you do have buy-sell agreements, you've got to review them on a very periodic basis. And I would argue even in a lot of situations, you may not even need a buy-sell agreement, because I've seen too many times where someone has died, become disabled, or left, been bought out at a very low price, and then the surviving owners, maybe a year or two later, sell on a very synergistic basis and really reap a windfall. Whereas if I had stayed in or my family had stayed in, I would have been able to enjoy some of that. Life insurance funding, if there is a buy-sell, making sure that there's some money available to pay for the buyout price. Personal financial planning is key, because what the studies have shown is literally 80% of a business owner's value is typically tied up in the business. And so you've got to worry about on the business side and the personal side. Business is really just an opportunity. I tell my clients all the time, there's no guarantee about making a profit in a business. All you have is an opportunity to make a profit. There's a lot of risks there. So a lot of times you need to be thinking about taking money out of the business, diversifying on your personal side so you don't have all your eggs in one basket, subject to things like lawsuits, bankruptcies, all the kinds of things that can negatively impact a business. Reducing taxes. Max was absolutely correct in that you can get more return on your investment by saving taxes than anything you can think of. Your business may be running, if it's a really good business, maybe 10 to 15% profitability. Well, at a very minimum with tax savings, I can get you 21% return, all the way up to here in lovely California, maybe a 40 to 50% return. And with the new tax law, there are a lot of things we can do to take advantage of that. And again, if we're proactive rather than reactive. So saving taxes goes right to the bottom line and can be a huge way to create additional revenue that adds into the value of the business. Maybe there's a way to take some of your eggs out of the basket and not all your eggs. Maybe you sell some of the business to a private equity group. Maybe you sell some of the business to key employees. One of the things we're doing a lot of these days is getting key employees into the game, letting them have skin in the game, making them more of an owner versus just an employee, getting them incentivized, making sure that they'll stay around, golden handcuffs. So getting employees, the key employees, owners of the business is a great way to lock them in and at the same time take some of your chips off the table. You've got to maintain control. Again, if I sell half of my business to my employees, I still want to maintain control. So what I'll do is maybe I'll sell them non-voting units and I'll keep the voting units. So no matter how much equity they hold, I still have the ability to control things. And then again, to make sure you've always got enough resources to maintain your lifestyle. That typically applies to family businesses. Unfortunately, I've seen situations where I've come in after the fact where the owners have transferred so much down to the next generation that they're no longer able to maintain their own lifestyle needs. And sometimes the next generation is not really remembering where they got their ownership. They're not being too benevolent about mom and dad and maintaining mom and dad in their lifestyle, and it can create some significant issues for the family. These things up here are all things to avoid that reduce value. If you've got maybe a concentration of one or two customers, that's not good. You need to have a diversification of customers. If you've got a key supplier, then you need to make sure you've got backups to that key supplier. Loss of a key owner. Again, you want to be very careful here, have good management in place, but that is something that could obviously be detrimental if you don't have that kind of a management team, if you haven't really divested yourself of a lot of the day-to-day activities, and if you lose yourself, then it could be very devastating to the business. Outdated products, but the big one, and this is the huge risk, is loss of key employees. Because most buyers, when they buy a business, are going to really want to have that management team stay intact. So as an owner, what you really need to do is to make sure that you are tying your management team to the business through ownership, equity ownership, maybe through some contracts, and then maybe through some incentives that if they do stay on through a sale, they get rewarded. They get a piece of the action, so to speak. And that's very, very critical from a buyer standpoint and then from an owner's standpoint to make sure you're maximizing your value. This is not rocket science, but it's things that we need to be doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, scaling products, leveraging things that we can, trying to get the most we can out of it. But that really requires sometimes working on our business rather than working in our business. We have to sometimes step back, not continuously put out fires and try to see ways that we can grow it. And obviously if we can scale something, make sure that we can leverage it, then we're going to basically have a better chance at doing so. Customer satisfaction, that's a no-brainer. Reoccurring revenue is huge. If you have to start over every year at zero, that's not something that a buyer really likes to see. Reoccurring revenue can be really, really important. Reducing taxes, being different, the old purple cow standing out from the crowd. Maximizing cash flow. As we've said before, cash flow is king. You've got to have the maximum cash flow you possibly can in order to get the best multiple you possibly can, and then minimizing your own dependence. If you do come across a situation where you're either planning on selling or someone's knocking at your door trying to perhaps purchase your business, or you're advising a business or working in this type of a business, then make sure that you're considering doing some pre-transaction planning. Because the worst thing in the world is for a business owner to work and build something up and then just be devastated by both income taxes and estate taxes. These can be pretty horrific. Here in the lovely state of California, as you know, you've got capital gains taxes, you've got California taxes. Those can mount up very easily to 35–40%. And then you've got another estate tax at 40% on the back end. So it can really devastate a family situation, a family's wealth, without taking the proper planning. And with the proper planning, we can reduce these down to literally very minimal amounts. And as Max said, really you have to look at this as a holistic type of a situation. What we like to do is we like to come in no matter where you are on the spectrum, whether it be a startup, a mature company, a company that's about to sell, and we want to come in and provide you with a holistic plan that covers both the personal side as well as the business side. Because again, you can't really differentiate the two in a closely held business. They're so intertwined that you have to plan for both. And with a master plan, a comprehensive plan, you're really maximizing that value, because again, a business owner typically only has one opportunity to sell a business, one bite at the apple, and if you screw it up, there's really no do-overs, and you and your family and really multiple generations can suffer by not maximizing the value of that business. So bottom line, there's about 20 million businesses, closely held businesses out there. Roughly about 80% of those will want to sell in the next 10 years. And why is that? Because primarily they're owned by baby boomers. And baby boomers don't like to go anywhere, but unfortunately they're getting to the age where they're going to be looking at health issues, they're going to be looking at passing away, and they're going to be looking at cashing in their chips and riding off in the sunset. And without a maximized business, you're going to basically be left in the dust. My investment banker friends get about 100 inquiries a year. They take 5 to market. So unless you're maximizing the value of your business, standing out from the crowd, being one of these synergistic types of businesses that can be acquired without any additional effort, you may literally have to shut your doors and turn out the lights because nobody's going to be willing to buy that because it's going to be a buyer's market. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.